In 1988, Honda switched from supplying Williams with their engines to supplying McLaren with their engines. The end result was a 1988 season that was very, very, very dull, all things considered, in terms of the overall results of the various Grand Prix held that year. But it happened a long time ago, so it's an epic season. The McLaren MP44 is the most successful Formula 1 car ever designed. It took pole position at 15 of the 16 races, only Mansell at Silverstone stopping that clean sweep, and it won 15 of the 16 races that season too. Senna tangling with a backmarker at Monza allowed Gerhard Berger to go on and win the race, which was the first Italian Grand Prix, or even the first Grand Prix for that matter, after the death of Enzo Ferrari. I'm sure someone will correct that statistic for me. This continued on for the next 3 seasons as well. Prost would take the championship under controversial circumstances in 1989, Senna would do exactly the same thing in 1990, and in 1991 the dominance wasn't as big as Williams had started to close the gap, but still Senna would win the championship and McLaren would take the constructors. 4 drivers and constructors championships in a row, which at the time was the record until Ferrari in the early 2000s, and now Mercedes in the last 10 years. So McLaren and Honda was the pairing at the time. You got those white and day-glow red McLaren Hondas, and obviously the iconic yellow helmet of Ayrton Senna driving those cars as well. So at the end of it all, you've got one hell of a nostalgia recipe right there. So when Honda announced its return to Formula 1 to join up once again with McLaren, there was a section of the fanbase that immediately thought of those days of the late 1980s. Prost, Senna, McLaren, Honda, Success, Hotel, Trivago. Honda is back with McLaren, with Ron Dennis. They've got Alonso and Button, who are in effect like modern day versions of Senna and Prost, just without the success. It'll be just like the good old days, right? Except, no. The engine was underpowered and unreliable. Insert overused GP2 engine meme here. Button and Alonso looked like underfunded privateer drivers in the 90s in that thing, and McLaren and Honda became the joke of the grid as they finished 9th in the constructors, ahead of only Marussia. And they were beaten by a Lotus team that had the bailiffs turn up at the Belgian Grand Prix because of unpaid debts and stuff. In 2016 though, things improved. Alonso and Button started finishing more races. I mean, Button still had quite a few retirements, but they were getting into the points more often. But the best result was 5th, twice. One at Monaco and one at Austin. But in 2017, they were back to where they were before. A sea of pink on the Wikipedia article for that season, and 2 non-starts at Bahrain and Sochi. But at least the retirement at Monaco wasn't to do with the Honda, more to do with a brain fart on Jensen's end. Fun fact, he still has to serve the penalty for that. Either way, that was McLaren's last season with Honda, as they would switch to Renault in 2018 and then Mercedes in 2020. A return to Mercedes, just like it was in the 90s with Hakkinen and Coulthard. It'll be just like the good old days. No, it wasn't. So it does beg the question, which is easier to achieve? A stable engine supply for McLaren, or for Spinal Tap to hold on to a drummer? And I say all this because it looks like Honda is back in the picture once again. Reports are coming out in the motorsport press that McLaren has been talking to Honda about getting back together. Again. Like an on-again, off-again girlfriend. Like Ross and Rachel in Friends, they were on a break. Honda is listed as being one of the engine suppliers signed up for 2026 when the new engine regulations come in. Basically what we have now, but the MGU-H removed, because no road-going hybrid car has one, and it will also remove a bit of the weight and do some other stuff. They'll increase the MGU-K power to compensate, if you're wondering what they're actually going to do. But either way, Honda is there along with Audi, Red Bull/Ford, Mercedes, Ferrari and Renault, which doubles the amount of engine suppliers seen in 2015 when it was just Ferrari, Mercedes and Renault. It might be the most engine suppliers seen in Formula 1 since the old V8 era when you had Mercedes, BMW, Toyota, Renault and so on powering teams. So this time the return of Honda to power McLaren has got people getting a little bit optimistic. Again, because a Honda or Honda derivative engine has won the last 2 drivers and or constructors championships. So with that Red Bull being an absolute rocket ship in a straight line this year and other stuff like that, because speed and power, that Honda engine in a McLaren, it's going to be like Senna and Prost again, isn't it? I mean, horses should be well and truly held on this, because number 1, it's not confirmed that Honda and McLaren are actually getting back together. Number 2, McLaren might not be the only team they've been talking to. Williams and Honda have been speculated about reuniting, but given that there's the existing Mercedes relationship, made even more solid with James Vowles now being there, that might just be, once again, nostalgia talking. As we've discussed before in another video, nostalgia is just heroin for old people. I think that's a Dara O'Brien joke, but it's still applicable to all of this. There's also Andretti, if that happens, even though the whole thing about using Renault engines, Cadillac, Honda badges Cadillac, Renault as Cadillac, the whole thing is just confusing. So there's potentially 3 teams there, but if McLaren can get a factory Honda deal, even better. There's also the difference between the current engine construction and the new engine construction. It's all well and good just removing the MG UK, but you've got to do some other bits and pieces on top of that as well. It's got to be powerful and reliable. Something that the Honda wasn't when it came back in 2015. But at least this time, Honda has the know-how, the experience, and the time to get it right. Because all of that was part of their initial downfall in 2015. Ron Dennis couldn't wait. He needed results yesterday, and he wanted to move on from Mercedes straight into Honda, and Honda came into Formula 1 a year earlier than they were supposed to. On top of this, trying to squeeze that engine into a size 0 car resulted in the temperatures going through the roof. Seals were being melted and the whole thing had to be turned down to make sure it didn't overheat. The whole thing meant that they were at least a year behind everybody else, maybe even 2 years behind everybody else. See the Nissan Longboy at Le Mans. But apparently the car was very nice to drive. At least Jensen said it was very nice to drive, so I mean that's a plus. But then again, anything is nice to drive when it's slow. There were some other issues too. The layout of the engine meant that they couldn't recharge the batteries like Hamilton, Ricciardo and Vettel could, at least in terms of quickly recharging it under braking or off the motor, meaning that, according to the race, they were up to 200 horsepower down on other cars in some circumstances, particularly at Spa. It seemed then McLaren was doing things one way and Honda was doing things another way, and with the car being built in England and the engine being worked on and developed and built in Japan, communications and maybe a language barrier too resulted in things being what they were. McLaren and Button said the car handled well. Honda thought otherwise, and they started pointing fingers at each other and blaming each other. But as 2015 rolled on, the car was such a meme that Honda and McLaren were close to damaging their brands entirely, even irreparably. Especially so considering, as I mentioned at the top of the video, that pair had created the most dominant F1 car ever. And to really rub salt into the already gaping wound, McLaren had to change engine suppliers twice since they parted with Mercedes at the end of 2014 before they could win a race in 2021. Honda meanwhile was powering a car that was on for the driver's title. Now though, with Honda having the success in 2021, the successor under Red Bull's own name doing the job in 2022, Honda knowing what it knows now about the building of an engine, and with the team under new management with Zak Brown and co, it's probably not the stupid idea some have been thinking. The whole, why go back, you saw what happened last time thing. Things have changed. Things are different. But to expect the golden years of Senna and Prost in white McLarens again, maybe we should just leave that in the past. So, a quick little video on the whole Honda maybe coming back to McLaren thing. If this has given you food for thought, then do give the video a like, leave your own opinions in the designated comment submission zone underneath this video, and get a discussion going. It is, after all, why I do this kind of stuff. And while scrolling down to leave a comment or just like the video, if you're not subscribed, get subscribed. Also get that bell on so you never miss out on anything I do around here. Massive thanks as ever to the folk at Patreon for the support, and if you want to help out with the buying of images for these videos or helping out with some other bits and pieces around here, the link to join is in the description. I might even turn on channel memberships as well because people like that kind of thing. Well, there's super thanks down there too if you just want to do a little one-off tip. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind, have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you all again soon for another video. Goodbye.